Recording and go ahead and go. I will time you just to see how it is too, how long it is.
Okay.
So go ahead anytime. And I
All
would
right.
start with introducing yourself.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Pat White. I'm from Philadelphia, PA. As far back as I can remember, we were always going somewhere. We were always traveling somewhere when we were little. My dad was originally from upstate Pennsylvania in a small town called Warrior Run. So every Memorial Day weekend, I know we would go up there and spend the weekend up there and see some of his family. He was one of four, and they were scattered throughout the country, but he would see a lot of them then. And also on Easter, his one sister lived in Harrisburg. So every weekend we would go, every Easter, we would go there and spend a few days there for Easter. So we were always going somewhere. Now, my mom's family, she was the youngest of nine, and they all did live in Philadelphia, but her one aunt, her one sister had a house down the shore down in Wildwood, New Jersey. So we would spend our summers there. We would go there. And I remember we spent, starting when I was about eight, I guess, second grade, we would spend our summers there. And while we were there, too, a lot of people would come down for the summer and work. And a lot of them came from all over, including Canada and Ireland. And I thought that was interesting. I would talk to them about the different places. And I just always looked forward to going to these places. Um, so when we would go up to upstate Pennsylvania, we would do that on Memorial Day weekend. We would go and visit the different lakes and see the people. And I would just like to explore there because it's mountains. There are a lot of mountains up there. So that was nice. In fact, the one time we had a dog, I brought my dog, went out and took my dog for a walk, and I was gone for about an hour and a half. So of course they had a search party out. They thought I got lost. Luckily I found my way back. But it was nice. It was interesting. And then when I was 6 years old, my one dad's sister lived in Miami, Florida. And so his niece was getting married. So we flew down to Miami, and that was great. Just leading up to going down there, all we did was talk about it. We would sit at the dinner table, pretend we were airplanes, flying in an airplane. It was great. I've never been afraid to fly. It was just so exciting to go somewhere else and see somewhere, some different things. And when we were down there, we saw whatever we could. That's what we would do when we would go places. We would just go and see whatever we could. Um, oh, that's 1 year. We also, my dad's brother lived in New York. So 1 year we went to visit them. It was a 4th of July weekend, and we did a lot of things there. We went to Fire Island, Coney Island. We did all different things. And I'll never forget, with 4th of July, we went to the beach on Coney Island, and it was packed, packed. So my mom stayed on the beach, and my dad brought my sister and I into the water. And I didn't want to stay for some reason. I wanted to go back. So when we were in the water where we could see, my mom was very close on the shore, and my dad just said, "Look, she's right there." And I saw her. He said, "Go to her." Well, it was so crowded. As you're walking, naturally, I got lost. I was wandering around for over an hour. I will never forget it, just crying and crying and crying. And finally, one lady, um, she took me, and they have a place that was under the boardwalk for children. And right as she took me up to the police officer, my mother came. We ran into my mom, and the police officer said to my mom, "You are the first person I ever saw crying," because apparently these people would just leave their kids, and they knew where they were at the end of the day. They were at this spot where you could just go get them. That was very, very scary. I never, ever forgot that. So I always kept an extra close eye on my son, I guess because of that, maybe a little too much. I don't know. But that was fun. Um, okay. So the place down the shore that my mom's sister had was in Wildwood, New Jersey. And I loved it. I just loved the beach. I've always been a water person, going to the beach. And sometimes on Sundays, my dad would just we would get in the car and we would just go for a ride different places. So one place he brought us up to Asbury Park, New Jersey. Yes, the hometown of Bruce Springsteen. But we went in the winter months. It was cold. And it was just for something different, something to do. And when we came home, my dad asked us, well, what did you like better? Did you like Wildwood better or Asbury Park? And I said, well, I like Wildwood better. And he asked why. I said, because it's warmer. I was young. um, oh, when we were 10, we went to Canada. That was great. Sometimes just looking forward to these trips was great. We drove on spring break. We left at nighttime. I'm not sure what time at night, but my sister and I had pillows. We slept in the back seat of the car. And when we arrived, it was daytime. So then we just spent our time there. It was great. We stayed in Canada, saw the Niagara Falls. It was in March, so the falls were still a little frozen. You couldn't get down and take the boat ride, the Maid of the Mist. But that was very interesting, see how the different people live. In fact, it was there that we learned to eat French fries and mustard. Thought that was interesting, and I still like that to this day. So in my early 20s, besides going down the shore all the time, I would just go down to Wildwood down the shore. We call it down the shore. I would do that all the time. And I couldn't really get anybody to travel with me. So I remember I booked a 3-day cruise. I booked a cruise all by myself. So I just booked it for 3 days since I wasn't sure how I would be. But that was nice. I went down to Nassau, the Bahamas. I just always wanted to travel. So then when I was 28, I enlisted in the Marines. I was working full time and putting myself through school. So I enlisted in the Marines. So I spent 16 years in the Marines. I finished my last 4 years in the Air Force. And with my 20 years in the military, I got to travel a lot. In total now, I've been to about 29 states, I believe, and 5 different countries. And it was great. When I would go away with the military, I would just find out what was there before I got there. And I would make sure I could see as much as I could, because I never knew if I was going to come back or not. And I saw a lot. I've been to New Mexico was the last place I went with the military, and that was great. I was working in a place called Gallup, Mexico. We were building homes for an Indian reservation. And while I was there, I went up to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And what was really neat about going to Santa Fe is when I was in my 20s, I saw a movie about this place called the Loretto Chapel. And the Loretto Chapel is a real place. Nuns used to live there. And when it was built, there were no stairs to the choir loft. So they had different carpenters come in and engineers, and they just said, well, there's no way that the church is built now. You just can't, you have to keep using a ladder. There's no way you can build steps. So the story behind this is that these nuns, they prayed for 9 days to St. Joseph. And then one day a man knocked on the door and said he was a carpenter. He said, I can build you stairs to that choir loft. Just let me live here and feed me while I'm here. So they did, and I swore that one day that I was going to go out and see that. So when I went to New Mexico, it was a 3-hour drive from where we were staying in Gallup, but I wanted to get there. I went up there, and the stairs were beautiful. And engineers and carpenters to this day still don't know how those stairs were built. They say it was impossible for them to be built the way they were built after that building was made. But that was just neat getting to see that 20 years later. Also, while I was in New Mexico, it was very interesting. I got to meet a Navajo code talker, and that was just a fabulous experience. I can't even explain it. If anybody doesn't know, the Navajo code talkers fought in World War II. The enemy was picking up on our codes, so the Marines recruited the Navajo Indians because no one could break their code. And it was very interesting to talk to this man and meet him. It was such an honor, such a thrill. And one thing I found out, that each Navajo code talker had a bodyguard. You know, it was another Marine, but they had a bodyguard. Here, the bodyguard's job was, should a Navajo code talker get captured, the bodyguard was supposed to kill the Navajo code talker so the enemies could not break the code. It was just fascinating. I've been to overseas. I was to Italy and Switzerland, and it's just amazing. I just can't wait to get back. Italy was just breathtaking, and I hardly saw any of it. We went to Rome. I couldn't get to see the Vatican because the line was too long by the time we were there. But just walking the streets of Rome, I was standing across the street from the Colosseum. We couldn't get in at the time because they were on high alert and they had it closed. But one day we went to this old beach town, Gaeta. We went to Naples. Naples, I thought it reminded me a lot of New York City, but just up hills, a lot of hills. And Pompeii, that was just amazing. You know, you read about these things in a book, and here I was walking around with it, with my husband and my son, taking pictures. It's just phenomenal. And in Pompeii, it was great. They have cases of everything that they found after they removed all the rubble, and they had dishes that were untouched. The one thing I did not like, though, they had people's bodies preserved, and you could just see the look of horror on their face. I didn't like that part that much. But I've never been afraid to fly, never been afraid to go anywhere. It's just amazing. One time with the military, I was stationed out in Texas for 3 months in Wichita Falls, which is up in northern Texas. It was right underneath Oklahoma. So one time I rented a car and drove up to this place called Wichita Mountains. And there I actually got to see buffalo and antelope just walk around. I mean, I have pictures of a buffalo that was very, very close to my car. That was just amazing, especially, you know, coming from Philadelphia. You hear the song where the deer and the antelope roam, but they really do. They really do. It was neat. I've just always wanted to travel. And luckily, my husband, whom I met in the Marines, we met while we were volunteering for Toys for Tots. He also likes to travel as much as I do. So we were lucky enough to come across this travel club where we get to stay in amazing places, because a lot of times before, I think a lot of people are like this. If you do go on vacation, you're saving and saving and saving for the vacation. You just stay in the cheapest hotel you could find, maybe cook your meals there, eat at the cheapest places. But now we can just go, we stay at 5-star hotels, we get treated like royalty. It's just phenomenal. And our son loves it too. Our son loves to go anywhere. I remember the flight to Italy, though. He was a little worried about that. It was a 9.5-hour flight. We landed in Switzerland, and he didn't sleep at all. He didn't sleep at all. And I guess a few hours into the flight, I was just starting to fall asleep myself, and we came into some turbulence. So he started to cry. So I was up then. But he did good. You know, we kept on having him watch his movies. We were watching movies, listening to music. So that never bothered me. I have a friend that's just afraid to travel. She's afraid to fly, but you know, anything can happen anywhere. You might as well enjoy yourself. I've been to California, San Francisco, San Diego. My husband and I, San Diego's our favorite spot. I've been there 3 times. All 3 times were with the Marines when I went to San Diego, and I stayed at different spots there. The one time I was there, I got to stay on Coronado Island, and I worked out with the Marine Recon. That was neat. One of the things I got to do was fast rope out of a helicopter. Fast roping is, if you ever see it, you can see the rope hanging from the helicopter, and people just slide down that. That's what I did. That's fast roping. That was amazing. I've done a lot. I've been to Hawaii. Hawaii was very, very nice. Florida, both coasts now, East Coast, West Coast. I've been almost to every state up and down the eastern seaboard, except for Georgia and I think Vermont. Other than that, I've been to a lot, all the states. Been to Mississippi. I guess the one place we worked at, I was with the Air Force the one year we were working at on a hangar. We were building a new hangar. We were in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Here, Morgan Freeman has a plane that he keeps in that hangar. I didn't get to see him, but he did come out sometimes and talk to the troops when we were there. And right down the road, Morgan Freeman and his friend own a bar. So one night we did go there. That was pretty neat. I've been to Utah, been to Las Vegas, Arizona. I've been to Arizona a few times, but I was only in Yuma, Arizona, a Marine Corps base. So I still have to go back, get to the Grand Canyon. That's on my bucket list. Nashville. Well, I was in Tennessee again with the military. So when I was there, when I had days off, I went up to Nashville. That was great. And then last year, I just ended up winning a trip to Nashville. Went out for 2 days. That was great. Oh, I can't.
I'm going to pause for a second.
Okay, talk about.
Okay, you're going.
The first time I had to get a passport, we had planned a dream trip to Mexico, Cancun, Mexico. So again, we were all excited. We all had to get our passports. Got our passports, flew down to Mexico. We stayed at the Hard Rock Hotel. We were treated like royalty. It was amazing. As soon as we got off the plane, they picked the company. They picked us up. They took us there. They greeted us. They had some things to drink. They had cocktail hour. We had a party that night, a get to know you party. Every single thing was included. Every single drink, every single bite we put into our mouth. They had a gorgeous pool with 2 bars at the end. It was right on the beach. For a snack, you could have gotten shish kebab, steak or chicken. You could have gotten, my son was getting hamburgers. You could have gotten anything. They had 5 restaurants on site. Every single thing was included. Every single thing was included. Our son's birthday happened to be during the time we went. He likes hibachi grills. They had a hibachi grill there. We went there for his birthday, and it was phenomenal. The cooks brought him up behind the thing. They spelled out his name in the rice. He wore the little chef's hat. When we got back that night, Dream Trips had decorated our door and wished him a happy birthday. We walked in. The room was decorated. There were balloons there. A towel was shaped in animals. There was a cake that said happy birthday, Ronnie, and a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses for my husband and I. We had just never, ever experienced things like this before. We traveled all the places, but we never stayed in 5-star hotels. It was just amazing. Our first dream trip, we went to Orlando. We stayed at Gaylord Palms Hotel, and we could have just stayed there and never, ever left the room. It was gorgeous. There was a big atrium. We had a private balcony. There were restaurants and shops inside the place. When we went to the pool the next day, there were slides and things for the kids, and we were setting up our stuff, and my son likes to spend some time by himself, so he walked over, he opened the gate and went to another place, and I went to check on him. I came back, I got my husband, I said, oh my goodness, hon, I said, let's go, pack up your stuff. That's a private adult pool with a bar. It was just amazing. Again, we had pictures of margaritas, pictures of sangria. Everything was free. They had restaurants there. I looked up the price of the room. The price of the room alone would have cost $350 a night. And then we got to go into the park. We spent a whole day at Orlando, and then we had dinner at Hard Rock Hotel, and then spent the next day again back at the pool. It was amazing. Everything was included. We couldn't believe that we had never heard of this place before, and we were just so sorry we hadn't joined 10 years earlier, because these trips are that phenomenal.
Perfect. That was better.